I found the Mochi film, or Mochi the movie now film, because one of the people in my Lives Well Lived film, Susie Edo Bauman, who, when I interviewed her for Lives Well Lived, invited me to this Mochi ceremony. And it's a beautiful ceremony. And it is I think for all of us, we can think about something that we had in our childhood that brought generations together through food.
Welcome to Zestful Aging, the podcast where we celebrate aging with vibrance and we defy the stereotypes of what it means to age. I'm your host, Nicole Christina, a psychotherapist of more than 30 years, here to introduce you to my off-the-mainstream guests who will energize and inspire you. My hope is to create optimism about getting older and help you cultivate zest and joy in this season of your life. And I love to hear feedback from you, my listeners. Please drop me a line at zestfulaging@gmail.com. I read every single comment. And to find out more about this podcast, hop on over to zestfulaging.com. Well, Saturday Night Live has an elite club of performers who have hosted multiple times, and now Zestful Aging Podcast has theirs. This is the third appearance for this week's guest. Sky Bergman is an accomplished award-winning photographer and filmmaker, and she's been particularly interested in the positive effects of intergenerational relationships, having enjoyed a loving and close relationship with her grandmother. And she has a new film out, which is about the Japanese American experience and how a particular food has provided emotional sustenance through the internment times. Mochi Tsuki has long united Japanese Americans from the hardships of World War II incarceration to modern-day celebrations. Once a symbol of resilience in incarceration camps, this tradition continues to bring generations together, preserving culture and community. Welcome back to the show, Sky.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I can't believe this is third time is a charm, right?
Third time. Well, the previous two were pretty good too. You just keep producing beautiful work. So, every time I see your next project, I say, oh, I want to hear more about that. And I hope I'm pronouncing it's Mochi Tsuki?
Close. It's Mochi Tsuki, and we're actually changing the name to Mochi the movie because it's too hard to pronounce Mochi Tsuki.
Okay. Yeah, that's that. Yeah, even really trying. I saw the pronunciation on your website. I practiced, and that wasn't enough. So I know you've been asked this a lot, but I'm curious, how did you find this as a subject matter?
Well, interestingly enough, I think for me, one thing leads to the next. And so I found the Mochi film, or Mochi the movie now film, because one of the people in my Lives Well Lived film, Susie Edo Bauman, who, when I interviewed her for Lives Well Lived, invited me to this Mochi ceremony. And it's a beautiful ceremony. And it is I think for all of us, we can think about something that we had in our childhood that brought generations together through food. And certainly Mochi is one of those things for the Japanese American community. And I went to her family farm and saw the ceremony and was just hooked. It's so beautiful. So if you don't know anything about mochi or mochi is actually rice that is steamed and pounded until it's kind of the consistency of bread dough, and then they form mochi balls. And mochi is a ceremony that takes place to bring in the new year. It's really a symbol of resilience and hope and for the future. And it brings generations together. And I love generations coming together to make food. That just loves me. And it's just so visually beautiful to see that. So that was what got me into it.
It's not unlike you and your grandmother and her sauce and her bread making and all of that. So lots of photos of you in the kitchen with your grandmother.
Absolutely. I think that there's definitely parallels. And I always say to my students, the more personal, the more universal the message becomes. And so, even though this is a story about a Japanese American tradition, it's very personal to me because of that connection that I had with my grandmother in the kitchen. And then also, something that you wouldn't know just by looking at me or knowing me is that my brother is married to a Japanese woman, and they have two children. So I have two Japanese American nephews. And the same day that I was filming the Mochisuki here in California, they were making mochi in Japan. And I love that
Oh my.
connection. It just helps me learn more about their culture and what they do. And it just was a wonderful sort of serendipitous moment.
Oh my goodness, that is beautiful. So you were talking about the beauty of the ceremony of the making. What is it that's so beautiful about making mochi?
Yeah, well, I think that the what's beautiful about making mochi is that you have all these generations that come together, and that it is something that you need more than one person to make. It takes a group effort to make something like this. So they have the rice steaming and the beauty of the steamed rice, and that steam coming out from these big contraptions that usually bamboo or wood, where the rice is steaming, and then you have the usu, which is the bowl where they put this steamed rice into, and they take the kine or mallets and pound it, and it's this rhythmic pounding, and there's a calling out of numbers so that people hit at a certain time, and the generations that are coming together to make that happen. Everybody takes turns with the mallets, and then they bring this like glob of bread dough looking material to this table where there's mochi powder, there's the flour and the rice flour, that it's just in the air. The rice flour is in the air, and they say if you don't have that white flour on your face, you haven't really participated in the mochi suki. And it's just so lovely to see the whole community come together to make this. It's usually in a barn and on a farm somewhere, so you have this very beautiful natural light that's coming in. And
Oh, wow. For a photographer, that must have been,
exactly. I mean, it just
yeah.
and then there's it really mochi itself does not really have a flavor because it's just rice that's been pounded and made into this very smooth consistency. You don't see any of the rice grains in there. It's got to be pounded until that disappears, and it just is so beautiful in terms of looking at that, and like that they throw when that ball gets on the table and they're forming the smaller balls, and you see all that from up above. It's just beautiful to watch. It's
I
just
can hear your
mesmerizing.
excitement.
Yeah.
And mochi now, I mean, I know at Wegmans, there are places they have it offered as a frozen dessert. Am I correct
So
in that?
there is so mochi is what they make. That's just the rice and that's it. And then they have things that they'll make with mochi. So you see like mochi ice cream in the store, and that's usually ice cream ball with like mochi surrounding it. Or, what's interesting is has become more Americanized and more mainstream because it is in stores and people know about it. There's also something called manju, which is where you take mochi and you make it a confectionery. So you add different things to it.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes like a sweet dessert, and people call that mochi, but actually it's manju is what it is.
Ah,
But
it reminds me of almond paste, like how it might be formed and painted and colored and
right.
yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah, because it
Wow.
has no flavor really on its own. And a lot of
Mhm.
Japanese Americans will use it in a soup that they have on New Year's Day called ozoni. So they put it into the soup, and it kind of gets a little stringy because, as it gets warm. But it's funny because in the film, one of the people says, well, she didn't realize how chewy it was until a friend of hers who is not Japanese said, well, when am I supposed to swallow? It's very chewy, and it really is, I think, an acquired taste. It's
Okay.
kind of a different thing, but it's not for me. It's not really about the mochi itself. It's really about the bringing together of all these generations. And then I think the story started off that way in this. It's a very short film. It was only about 4 or 5 minutes. Really talking about just this one family. And during the pandemic, I started building it out to be more about the Japanese American experience as told through this mochi making ceremony, because even during World War II, in the roughest of times for Japanese Americans, when they were incarcerated in camps, they still figured out a way to make this mochi as a symbol of hope and resilience and good luck for the new year. And that was so important to them that they still figured out a way to make this happen.
Hmm. And I remember reading about this in your material, and they couldn't use their regular mallets. They had to adapt.
Yeah, and so for many, they had to form the mallets themselves. They had to make the bowls. I interviewed George Takei. If any of you know George Takei from the old Star Trek days, the original
Hmm.
Star Trek, who he's an amazing advocate for Japanese Americans, and he actually was himself interned during World War II. And he said the one bright spot that he had during that time was making mochi in the camp. And he remembers where they were allowed to get from outside the camp and bring it in a dead tree that they carved out and made the mallets and made the bowl so that they could have what they needed to make mochi.
That's really fascinating. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, he has a book out, a children's book, talking about the internment.
Yes, he does. He's like I said, he's a really strong advocate and wants to get the word out about what that was like. And so it's really important. I think it's really important, especially in this day and age, to remember what we had done in our own country in our past. And the book, for anybody that wants to look it up, is called "My Lost Freedom." And
Mm.
it's a great book to just a reminder of what happened in our very own country. And I grew up on the East Coast. Nobody talked about that on the East Coast. I didn't find
Mhm.
out about the Japanese internment until I moved to California and started hearing these stories and thought, my goodness, this can't possibly be true. And doing my own research to find out that, yes, indeed, 125,000 plus Japanese Americans were interned during World War II. It's
Mhm.
incredible that that happened.
And what I learned in my brief research, because I too am from the Northeast and did not, I heard like maybe a little whisper about something,
Hmm.
but the idea that they were taken from California and brought to places that were culturally like, the Midwest and Arkansas, and just the really random places that
Right.
were awful.
Yeah, George was taken first to the Santa Anita racetrack and his family was put into a horse stall.
Oh,
That was where they were first interned. And then they were taken to a camp in Arkansas
wow.
and then to another camp in, I think it was in Utah. So yeah, not, really we don't talk enough, I think, about what happened in the past because I think that we can learn from our mistakes, hopefully to never repeat them again. And I
Mhm.
think that's super important to not just forget about the past, but to remember it, to honor it, and to learn from our mistakes.
Mhm. What was it like speaking with him? I saw that in the socials. You two were physically together, right? It wasn't just a conversation. How was that for you?
Well, I have to say that when I was a kid, I watched Star Trek with my dad. So I thought that show was amazing and way far ahead of their time. I think if you look at, Roddenberry was way ahead of his time. If you look at the cast of characters that were in there, I mean, you have
Right,
an African American woman on the ship, on the like as somebody who was of importance. You had George
right.
Takei. You had, such a multicultural, multiracial group of people on there and just
Multispecial
yeah,
at
right,
times.
multispecial, right, exactly. I mean, with Spock, right? He just so for me, it was such a childhood dream. I mean, I have to say, I'm not that usually nervous when I go to do an interview, but I was pretty nervous leading up to that interview. And he just put me at ease. He's 88 years old. He is just an amazing human being and so
Mm,
sensitive and just yeah, really just amazing. He just made it so easy for me. It was amazing. It
mm.
took 2 years to get the interview, but
Oh,
once we had that, it was well worth the wait. And we thought we had the film done. And I emailed one last time to say we'd really love to include you. And this is the lesson that I learned. It's a good thing to be respectfully persistent, and that is something that I have done. And even to get the interview with George, I reached out to all my filmmaker friends and I said, "Hey, I have this idea. I'm working on this film. I would love to interview George Takei. And if any of you know anyone that can has a connection," and I had two of my filmmaker friends that did, and one who actually made an introduction. And and I think that, reach out, ask for help, and then be respectfully persistent, because sometimes things don't happen right away. Sometimes some of the best things take a little bit of time to happen. So
I love that advice. I've also pursued guests and thought,
Mhm.
oh, well, I guess that's not going to happen. And then 6 months later, I hear from them and it's a thrill. Well, if you've followed me for a while, you know I am extremely picky about sponsorships and endorsements. So when I decide to share something with the Zestful Aging audience, you know it's worth talking about. Recently, I've been an evangelist for a revolutionary method of navigating difficult emotions. When my friend introduced me to this neurographic art at our craft group, I thought to myself, now that's an ugly drawing and I will not be drawing that. I didn't understand at the time that neurographic art is not about making pretty pictures. It's actually a technique that utilizes neuroplasticity, psychology, art therapy, and neurophysiology. And you only need paper and colored pencils. Although I've been doing it so much, I just ordered an electric pencil sharpener. So, a little backstory. Neurographic art was developed in Russia by a psychiatrist who's also an artist, and it's only found its way to the US in the last few years. And I cannot say enough about how helpful and clarifying this technique is. So, what I'd love you to do is check out Mindful Line. That's MindfulLine.com. And there's all kinds of things that you can join. Now, if you decide you'd like to purchase a course, please use mindfulline.com/zestful aging, because this link will give you a special discount. So whatever you purchase, it would be for your lifetime, and the cost or the fee is not just for the first month. And you're also going to get a special bonus masterclass. So even if you don't want to purchase anything, I highly recommend you familiarize yourself with this really cool technique that I can't stop talking about. Check out Mindful Line and happy drawing. I would love to hear what you've discovered. Well, it sounds like it was lovely because not only could he tell you about Mochi, but he's somebody you really respect, and he's known for his his humanitarian advocacy and
Absolutely.
commentary, really
Yes. Yes.
smart commentary.
Yeah, and I think that the other thing for me for the film is that I had a lot of people talking about their parents or their grandparents' experience during World War II, but here George Takei was talking about it from a very firsthand experience, and there is nothing like that. I mean, I think that's one of the powers of the films that I work on, like Lives Well Lived, and now the Mochi film, is when you can read about something but it doesn't have the same impact as hearing a firsthand account and hearing someone's very personal story. And all of a sudden it comes to life and you can imagine yourself in their shoes. And I think that is the power of filmmaking and storytelling, that you can have that effect. And George certainly is a good storyteller, and it was lovely to get his story on recorded.
Do you think this is a particularly important story in terms of current events and some of what's going on in the United States? Not to put too fine a point on it, but is there something? Does it have a greater importance in terms of where we could end up if these beliefs and these prejudices are allowed to flower?
Right. That is a very good question. And I think that one of the things that has been interesting and alarming to me in recent days is using the same executive order that was used to intern all the Japanese Americans for the Venezuelans that were sent back away. And I think that, as enemies of the state. And I think
Mhm.
that's just something to be cognizant of, and to we want to make sure that that these things don't repeat themselves. And there is a little bit of that happening at this moment. So not to get too political, but I do think we need to learn from our past as to how we move forward, and to move forward in a humane and kind way, and to remember that people are just people, and to treat people with respect.
Mhm. Yes, that does seem to be a novel concept these days, the
Yeah.
respect part. How have you been? I'm just, as a filmmaker, you have been traveling and
Oh yeah.
talking and sort of following your progress here and there. You spent time in Europe, you were all over. How is this as a filmmaker? I know you want to show it to as many people as possible and enter it in film festivals and all. Like, is there a part of you that, is this a marathon? And how are you taking care of your own self, I guess is the question.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I have learned is that no is a complete sentence, and I've learned to say no to things that don't feel good or right, and to carve out more time for myself to have a more balanced life. So I do want to get my work out there, but I'm also learning to take a couple months to myself when I need to, and to really just enjoy that time to get away from the computer. I think that's super important. I think sometimes we tend to feel like we have to be on the computer all the time to get our projects done. And in fact, my best work is done when I'm walking or doing yoga or doing something else, and I'm still thinking about all the work that I'm doing, but I'm refreshed. And so I think that's been great. I do travel a lot with Lives So Lived. I just came back from Michigan, where they did a year-long series called A Life Well Lived Kalamazoo at Western Michigan University, where they showed the film to older adults and students, and they had them work together for the whole academic year.
Oh my gosh, that must have been
Yeah,
so rewarding for you.
fabulous. And and I hope that there are other universities that pick this up. I work with my own university here at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, California, doing that. But it's been a real joy when I see other high schools or universities picking this up and running with it, because my goal with Lives Well Lived was really to connect generations. I mean, I think that all the work that I do at this point is going to have some connection to that, to how do we break down the stereotypes of ageism, one story and one connection at a time. And we think about all these other isms, and we sometimes forget that ageism is one of those isms. And it's really, we have the us versus them. And I'd like to create the scenario where it's more about the we rather than the us versus them. And when you have a friend from that other group, whatever it is, whether it's another race, another religion, another age, all of a sudden those stereotypes start disappearing, and it does become more about the we. And so whatever I can do to bring generations together through film, through storytelling, through sharing all the things that I share about other organizations that are doing interesting work connecting generations, that to me is at the core of who I am and what I want to do.
Yeah, I mean, certainly there you're contributing in so many different facets, not only the filmmaking, but you're, I know that you're involved in other organizations whose mission is to do intergenerational um, mission strengths. Yeah, that's really lovely. It must be. I would imagine, not being in your 20s anymore, there's something about having a clear vision. I wonder what that's like, because I'm sure, when you were doing your full time academic work. You had a lot of different things going, but it sounds like there's a just crystallized what you're here to do now. What is that like?
Well, I think when you reach a certain age, at least for me, it's not about making money anymore. I have enough money to live. I'm very fortunate in that regard. I had a wonderful teaching job that left me with a pension, so I really can say yes to the things that I want to pursue with a passion. And there is a clarity that comes with that, where you can turn things down and say yes to the things that you love doing and
Mhm.
really go for it full force. And I think one of the things that I learned from all the people that I interviewed for the Lives Will Live film and that I talk about in the book is it's so important to have a sense of purpose, and that purpose changes over time. And I have been very lucky that as I have pulled back from teaching, I have a new sense of purpose, and that's filmmaking and storytelling and doing all the things that I'm doing. And I, for those people that are trying to figure out what their sense of purpose is, I would start with what are you passionate about? What do you love doing? What do you love getting up every day and thinking about and wanting to be present for? That is a good place to start to figure out what you're passionate about and what your sense of purpose could become in whatever next act you might be entering.
Yeah, I think that's so good. And the way I kind of determine it is like, what is energizing? Because you can
Mhm.
still be tired when you're doing a lot of the work you love, but there's an energy as well, right? That comes from an excitement and aliveness.
Oh, absolutely. I think that if you when you find what it is that you love doing, it feeds your soul,
Mhm.
and that yeah, you may be tired when you're working on things. And what I have learned is to take breaks and I can't be in front of the computer screen more than a couple hours at a time. And I used to be able to be in front of it for 8 or 10 hours, but it's not
Wow.
healthy for me to do that anymore. And I realize I'm better off taking those breaks and listening to my body. But when I'm in front of the screen and I'm working on a project, and I was just working on the Mochi film and putting George Takei in there and reworking it a little bit, and I was energized, I was alive, and I think
Mm.
that tells me that I'm doing the right thing. So I really listen to those moments, listen to how I'm feeling. Is it an energy suck or is it an energy boon? And I think that's a
Oh,
good way
yeah.
to kind of listen to your body. It doesn't steer you astray too much.
That's right. That's right. Are you at liberty to talk about what is on the horizon here for you, or are you still just absolutely absorbed in Mochi?
No, no, no. I have two other films that are in the works right
Mhm.
now because I had a professor who's now become a very good friend who always used to say multiple streams of interest, multiple streams of income. And for me, it's just been
Mm.
like multiple streams of income, multiple streams of joy. So I kind of switched it around. But for me, I have the other film that I'm working on, other two films. One is called The Primetime Band, which is
Mhm.
explores how music connects generations and transforms lives, and you can see that on the website. And the other is called The Jollytologist, which is about discovering the power of humor, awe, and resilience through the life of this wonderful gentleman, Alan Klein. And he calls himself the Jollytologist. And if you
Mhm.
look on the website, you'll find a little bit more. But it's been such a joy to work on them. I think in particular for me, I have to have a connection to everything that I work with. So for me, like the Primetime Band is about people going back to instruments later in life who maybe played instruments when they were in high school or junior high school. And I played flute, clarinet, and bassoon when I was in junior high and high school. So I'm a
Wow.
band geek, and I can relate to that. And the first time that I went down to the band, it's in Santa Barbara, and there's about 75 people in this band. They rehearse every Tuesday night. I went down there and I brought just my flute, no cameras, just a flute to sit in and play with them. And I think that was super important because I became one of them. And
Mhm.
I just love it. I mean, I love working on it. I go down there anytime I film, I bring my flute so I can play a few songs with them. And it's just a wonderful feeling. So I think super important to find that passion, and to any of the projects that I work on, I have to feel like I'm immersed in it and that I'm part of it. And the other part that I love about the band piece is that many of the band members are part of a group called the Music Van, which is quite literally a van full of instruments that goes into third grade classrooms and introduces
Oh my
8-year-olds to
God.
instruments for the first
Oh boy.
time. And
See,
it
now we have to already schedule another
I
interview.
know. See, there we go. It's so great. I mean, it's just to see the joy on their faces as they pick up a
Mm.
trombone or a violin. It just was awesome. So, yeah, I'm loving life doing all these projects. Never would have thought this would have been something that I would be doing at this point in my life. If somebody had told me this, maybe 15 years ago, I would have laughed. But I have left myself open to the possibilities and followed my passion, and it's led me into some really beautiful places.
Well, hi, Zesties. In addition to being a podcaster and psychotherapist, I'm an avid thrifter. And I think it's something you either love or you hate. I've always loved finding treasures, and it makes me happy to keep things out of the landfill. You may already know that fast fashion is a real scourge on the environment. And I have a few podcast episodes that explore this. One of my favorites is with Eric Minter, who's the world's authority on the secondhand market. His book, Secondhand, is really recommended. And here I'm digressing. The reality is that I love to thrift, but I also like to wear the same basic outfit. So I've started an account on eBay I wanted to tell you about. Here's a humble brag. I have an eye for quality pieces. Linen and cashmere are my favorites, and I'd love you to check it out. Go on eBay and type in Nikki's Thrifty, and it's NICKY''S Thrifty with a Y, and see what you think. I'd love your feedback. It feels like the through line here is resilience. I'm thinking about the Mochi. I'm thinking about Primetime Band. And I know from talking to you before and also looking, some of the folks have different, I think, doesn't one have some hearing loss or there's some Parkinson's? I mean, it's...
Yeah. Oh, yeah. In the Primetime Band, I mean, I love the Primetime Band piece because it kind of brings together all the things that I learned about living a life well lived, which is having a sense of purpose, resilience, positivity, community. All of those things show up in the Primetime Band. And yes, there's people that play that have Parkinson's. There's one woman who plays a flute, but she has no rotator cuff anymore. And she can't hold a flute horizontally. So she's figured out to have a headstock so she can hold it vertically and still play. I mean, it is amazing, the resilience of the people in the band and what they do to come week after week. And that sense of joy and community and belonging and purpose that when you see them all playing together, there's nothing like it. I mean, it's just lovely.
Because we're hitting that deep evolutionary need to be, in a pod, with our people and all of that. And I think even the Jollytologist, from what I saw, there's a theme of resilience running through.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's true. This sense of resilience, this sense of I'm often reminded of, of a phrase from my Lives Will Live film, which is like the attitude that you have about life is really the only thing you can control. There's so many times when we can't control the things that are happening around us, but what we can control is our attitude about how we deal with those things. And that is super, super important to remember is that, we all have bad days. And I am one of those people too. And then I think about the people in my film and the people that I've interviewed for my new films. And I think about their resilience, and it helps me get through some of those tougher times and to reframe what I look at as obstacles instead of them being obstacles, to look at them as challenges. And somehow the semantics and the words that we use to talk to ourselves and to others makes a big difference in how we move through this world.
Oh, that is so important and great to remember these days, I think. Feeling like resilience is possible, challenges, but not, some choices, not a lot, but still some choices in our day to day. What's going to help us feel more resilient? And that's, as a psychotherapist, that's sort of the bread and butter of the whole conversation.
Exactly.
So, Sky, can you tell our audience? I know there's a trailer that's lovely. You have a beautiful website. How can people find out more?
Yeah, the easiest way is I made one website that has everything on it. It's skybergmanproductions.com. And
Mm-hmm.
that links to all the different projects that I'm working on, including the book that I just did on Amazon and Lives Well Lived, the Jollytologist, the Mochi film, the Primetime Band, and I did another film called Forever Voters. Everything is there. And my
Mm-hmm.
contact info is there. So if anybody wants to reach out, I really try, if you make the effort to reach out, I try and reach back out to everyone that reaches out to me. So skybergmanproductions.com.
Beautiful. Well, I am really excited to hear more about the film. It looks. There's this photo on the website of a grandfather and a little girl, and
Yeah.
it's just so tender.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, is it beautiful? So, thank you for doing this work. We really appreciate it right now, and I love your attitude. Thanks for taking the time.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining us on Zestful Aging. If you like the podcast, please share it with some of your friends.
Our theme song is All I Did Was Wait for You by Kjartan Abel. Visit Kjartan-Abel, that's KJARTAN-Abel, ABEL.com to hear more of Kjartan's work. And our technical director is Stephen Litweiler.
And stay tuned next week for another interview with a fascinating and inspiring guest. See you then.